Section 2 is talking about end behavior, END, okay? And it's what happens on the graph. So what happens on either side of the graph. So we're only going to care about, I mean, we will be graphing, so we'll care about more. We're going to talk about what happens on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. Okay, what do I mean when I say degree? The degree of a function.
Highest exponent.
Highest exponent. Okay? If it's an odd degree, what are your odd numbers? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. Okay. Positive numbers. What do you mean I say a positive number? Okay, so not a negative sign in front of it, right? It can be an even number, just like you have a negative sign. So odd degree, positive leading coefficient. Now, I don't care what happens in the middle of the graph, but on the outsides of the graph, it's going to start down, something's going to happen in between, and it's going to go up. So on the left-hand side, it falls to the left, and on the right-hand side, the arrow's going up, so it rises to the right. Okay, you need to use your words. Do not draw arrows. Okay? So it falls to the left, rises to the right. Now, I don't know, you could have like 20 humps in there. Or you could have no humps in there. We care about the left hand and the right hand side. Okay, if it's odd degree and a negative leading coefficient, it's basically going to do the opposite. So it's like flipping it. So it's going to start up here, something's going to happen, and it's going to go down there. So this one rises to the left and falls to the right. Okay, what are even numbers?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Who do you appreciate? 2, 4, 6, 8. Oh, hold on. Isn't that like an old school cheer?
Yeah.
Okay. So even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. Positive leading coefficient. If it's an even degree, they do the same thing. So they're either both going to go up or they're both going to go down. If it's positive, doesn't matter what happens in the middle. This rises to the left, and it rises to the right.
Can you write rises to left and right, or do you have to write rises?
You can write rises to left and right. Okay, what do you think it's going to do if it's negative? Okay, it falls on both of them. Doesn't matter what happens in between there. It's going to fall both ways. So it falls to the left. And it falls to the right. Okay, so for your homework that's on this section, the first section we're going to describe end behavior. So this first section is no graphing. You're going to be looking at equations and you're going to be able to say, does it fall to the left? Does it rise to the left? What's going on? Are we good or not good? Anybody need to wait? Okay. So we're going to do 3 examples. Okay, so we're gonna just have the right hand, left hand behavior, and the end behavior. So you're gonna look at the degree. So what's the degree on number 1? 3. Okay, so is that number odd or even? Odd. Okay, so this is odd. And then is my number in front positive or negative? Positive. So what happens if it's an odd degree and a positive leading coefficient?
All the left, right to left.
Okay, so that's all you're gonna do. Write it down. So falls to the left and rises to the right. So you're not graphing this section at all. You're just describing. Okay, what's the degree on number 2? 5. So highest exponent would be 5. Okay, now look at the number in front of that. It's negative. So 5 is odd, right? So odd degree, negative leading coefficient. Rises to the left and falls to the right. Okay, last one. What's the degree? 3. Okay, it might not always be in the right order, so you have to find the one with the highest exponent. So we're at 3. 3 is odd. Okay, is it positive or negative leading coefficient? Negative. Okay, I know this number is positive, but you look at the number with the degree. So I'm looking at the number right in front of this, which is negative. So odd and negative means it rises to the left and falls to the right. So you always have to find the one with the highest exponent, and you look at that for everything. So you look at it for not just the degree, but the number that's in front of it. Okay, so that's exactly what you're doing on page 149, 16 through 22 even. Okay, so like yesterday we covered all of this, that'll cover this. Now we're going to talk about the graphing. Is there any questions on end behavior, right, left hand behavior? Okay. Alright, for the graphing, you may want to simplify these directions for yourself. Okay, the leading coefficient test, that's determining the right and left hand behavior. So we're going to find the right and left hand behavior. Then we're going to find the zeros, and then we're going to graph. That's what this all means. So you're going to find the right and left hand behavior. Bless you. You're going to find the zeros, and you're going to graph. This is different than the directions on your homework. So if you don't write anything else down, make sure you know that this is different than the directions on your homework. Because we're not going to talk about multiplicity. So we're going to find the right and left hand behavior. We're going to find the zeros, and we're going to graph. Okay. Right and left hand behavior. And then find the zeros, and then graph. So you'll have 3 parts you have to do. Okay, so what's going on this one? It's an even degree, right? Because it's 2, and the number in front's positive, so what's my right and left hand behavior? Okay, it rises both of them, right? So it rises to the left and rises to the right. So that's one part of your answer. Okay, then the second part's going to be finding the zeros. How you find the zeros is you set your function equal to 0 and solve. Okay, most of these will be factoring. You could do this one by square roots if you want to. Do you have a preference, square roots or factoring?
Square root.
Square roots? Okay, so I did by square roots, I would add 9. Then when I do the square root, don't forget when you do square roots, you need to have plus or minus. Square root of 9 is 3. So my zeros are positive and negative 3. Okay, that's part 2. So we found the right and left-hand behavior, found the zeros. Part 3 is graphing. Okay, if you do not have zeros, you do not have to graph. Okay, that's not true on the homework from yesterday. So if you didn't have X intercepts on the homework from yesterday, you still need to graph it. Okay, but for this, if there's no zeros, you don't need to graph. This one has zeros. So what we're going to do is, first thing you're going to do is you're going to plot those. So I have negative 3 and I have 3. Okay, what's happening on the right and left hand side? Okay, it's rising on both. So we can go ahead and know that this is going up and this is going up. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find out what happens in between there. So to find out what happens in between there, the easiest way would be to do a T-chart and plug all those numbers in. Okay, if your numbers are decimals or fractions, you just need to plug in like the whole numbers or the integers. You don't have to plug in every single number, but you need to plug in all of your integers that are just between them. So if I plug in negative 2 squared is 4, minus 9 is negative 5, negative 1 squared is 1, minus 9 is negative 8, 0 squared is 0, minus 9 is negative 9, 1 squared is 1, minus 9 is negative 8, 2 squared is 4, minus 9 is negative 5. Okay, so then what you do is you plot all these points, and then you're like connecting the dots. And you always work left to right. So then I start left off here, I go down and get all my points, and then I go back to left. And you're done. So we did the right left hand behavior, you find your zeros, and as long as there are zeros, then you graph. Okay, what questions? We're going to do 2 more of these. What questions do you have on it? You guys okay? Alright. Alright, next one. Okay, is your degree odd or is your degree even? Even. Okay. And the number in front is positive or negative? Positive. So what happens to your graph? So it rises to the left and rises to the right. Okay, then we're going to find the zeros. So I'm going to set 5x to the 4th plus 15x squared plus 10 equal to 0. Okay, then I'm going to factor. So I can factor out of 5, and I'm left with x to the 4th plus 3x squared plus 2. Okay, multiply to get 2 and add to get 3 would be 2 and 1. So I have 5x squared plus 2, x squared plus 1. Okay, then the parts that have parts that have variables, so the 5 doesn't have a variable, you can forget about that. The other parts, you set equal to 0 and solve. Okay, does anybody see an issue yet? Okay, you're going to be taking the square root of negatives, right? Can you take the square root of negatives? Okay, so does this have any zeros? So when it asks for zeros, this would be none. Okay, and my second period, I asked them what they wanted to do. So they said that if it had no zeros to not graph it, so I said that's fine. So you guys can do the same thing. That only applies to this assignment because you still need to graph on the 134 if they don't have intercepts. Because those are just quadratics.
So how would you block that?
So you'd have to just plug in points up here. What's going to happen is it is graphed, it just never crosses here. It's a graph that's up here. So it never actually crosses x-axis. Alright, is there any questions over this one? Okay, one more. Last one. Even or odd degree? Odd, number in front, positive or negative? Positive, so what's going on with the graph? Falls to the left. And rises to the right. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is we have to find the zeros. I'm going to set it equal to 0. Okay, so the first thing I do is I would factor out the GCF. So they all have a 3x in common. Come up with x squared minus 4x plus 1. Okay, well if I set 3x equal to 0 and solve, what's 1 0 I know of? 0. Okay, now the other part doesn't factor. If it's a quadratic and it doesn't factor, that means you have to do the quadratic formula. Okay? So this would be 4 plus or minus the square root, negative 4 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 1, all over 2 times 1. Okay, so anytime I square root, that would be 16 minus 4, which is 12. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 over 2. Okay, is 12 a perfect square? So what do we have to do if it's not perfect? Factor tree, good. So it would be 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 3 over 2. And then those are all divisible by 2, so my answer would be 2 plus or minus square root of 3. So my zeros are 0 and 2 plus square root of 3 and 2 minus square root of 3. And now we get to graph it.
Just draw something down.
Oh. Thank you. Okay, this is not perfect, but you can still plot this 0. So I know zeros is an answer. Okay, then I would just take my calculator and say, okay, what's 2 plus the square root of 3? Well, that's 3.73, so if I go to work, so 1, 2, 3, between 3 and 4, closer to 4. And then I would do 2 minus the square root of 3, which is 0.27, so that'd be about right here. Okay, what's it doing on the far left-hand side? Falls. What about the far right-hand side? And what I gotta do is I gotta find in between here. Okay, we have to have some number between every point. So I have to have some number between 0 and 0.26, so we know what's going on with that graph. So I'm just gonna use 0.1. Then I need all the other integers, so I need to use 1, 2, and 3. So as long as you have at least one number between points on decimals, it's fine, but I want all the other integers that are between there. Okay, so if I plug this in, we get 0.183. If I plug in 1, we would get -6. And if I plug in 2, we would get -18. If I plug in 3, we get -18. So then if I plot these, this is going to be like right here, so that's going to connect there. And I have 1, -6. Okay, -18 is going to be off my thing. Okay, if yours goes off, you can either count by 2s or use your best judgment of where it would be. I'm not going to be super picky, but if you had a point that's way up here, and I know the answer should be way down there, that's going to be wrong. Okay? But if it goes off, you can either tell me that you're counting by 2s. I'm not just going to assume it. Okay? And then make sure you show it kind of down as far as you can. So these are going to be your directions on the 6 graphing ones. So you don't have to do the multiplicity. You don't have to do the verifying your answer. Okay, I just want to do the right and left hand behavior, your zeros, and your graphing. Alright, is there any questions?